and she's so official now, telling us that
I know.
we're
I have to agree
employed.
to it.
That's right. Chris, the entire podcast series, it's about winning in a new leadership role, and that's you. So can you tell us about your new leadership role?
Yeah, it's an exciting time in my life. I've been at Lifeway for the last 6 years, I guess, something like that. Before that, I was on staff at a couple of churches as an executive pastor, but I have just recently, in the last 45 days, started a new role with the church Harvest Christian Fellowship, which is mainly based in Southern California. Also has a campus in Maui, Hawaii, which is where I just got back from, which is a nice perk.
Yes, that is.
Being on staff there. But yeah, I am the executive pastor of discipleship and small groups at Harvest. I'm actually still living in Tennessee, so doing a lot of it remotely, but going out about a week a month and spending some time out there. And yeah, it's a new and an old role, so it's kind of different. I'm just going back to what I've done, but in a new way.
Well, we were thinking about titling this episode Success Within the First 90 Days, but maybe it's Success Within 45 Days, and we'll see what happens out at 90 days. I don't know. But Chris, it seems like one of the keys to success with any job transition is to develop relationships and to establish credibility on the team as quickly as possible. So how are you trying to approach that at Harvest right now?
Yeah, and I'll probably refer to this book quite a bit. I've read through it now, I think 4 or 5 times. Every time I've gotten a new role, like I've gotten a promotion or I've started at a new company or organization, I go back, but it's the first 90 days, which I know you're familiar with, Tony. Mm-hmm. But I learned a lot from that. And one of the biggest things I learned was to accelerate your learning until you can get through what they call the breakthrough point or the break-even point, where you are contributing as much as you're consuming from your organization. And so right now, I feel like I'm consuming a lot, but within that, I'm establishing those relationships with the stakeholders, with my peers, all of the people that I need to learn from as I learn the history of the church. This church is now 50 years old. Mm-hmm. So obviously they have a lot of things that they've done for a long time. A lot of the staff members have been there. Pastors have been there 35 years. And so I don't want to come in and just say, I've done this before. Here's how we should do it going forward. I want to establish those relationships, listen to the people that have been there, so I understand the culture, the history, the politics, everything that goes into just an organization before I do anything else. So yeah, you said I'm 45 days. I'm kind of halfway through my 90-day plan that I draw out. And really in this, I'm really consuming a lot, but I'm learning a lot by establishing those relationships and listening a lot more than I'm talking right now.
Yeah. And I know this because I've known you for so long, Chris. I mean, curiosity is just built into your personality. It's who you are. And so my suspicion is this plan that you have mapped out and how you're processing through it, it almost comes naturally to you, but it's a good reminder for those of us that might not have that wiring in us naturally, that we need to lead with curiosity when we're starting in a transition like this. Ministry strategies, in many ways, they often look identical from church to church. I've noticed this as I've been working with so many churches through the years, but especially as an outsider looking in, I mean, you sometimes look at 2 different churches and you think they're the same church. But in reality, what I've learned, what makes churches distinctive, it's their culture. And oftentimes that distinctive culture is driven by the senior pastor. So my question is, how are you trying to catch up to speed and understanding of Harvest's unique culture?
Yeah, you're right about the different cultures. I've now worked for, this will be my 3rd church, really. And as far as the outside looks, they're very similar between Seacoast, Crosspoint, and Harvest. I mean, the mission is the same. We're reaching lost people. We're getting them connected into groups, discipling them. But the way that happens in the communication and the way just it's led is very different from church to church. And I'm learning that with Harvest. Like I said, they've been around for 50 years. And Greg Laurie, who's the pastor, has been the pastor since day one. He's launched the church. He's still pastoring and still going strong at 50 years. And so I know coming in that I'm going to have to really understand what Greg's style is, or even his love language. Every pastor, every organizational leader has a love language, a way that they operate, the way that they like to be communicated with, all of that. And so I've spent quite a bit of time going into this, just learning Greg's love languages, how he communicates. I had a little bit of a head start, honestly, because I had started training their leaders a couple of years ago and working with them. But still, there's nothing like one-on-one time. And so it's funny with Greg, he's not a meeting guy. He's just not. And I'm more of I think you're driven this way, Tony. I am a meeting guy. I like getting in. If we have an agenda, it just gets everybody on the same page. Greg's just not like that. He likes to go and ride a motorcycle and then stop for lunch just somewhere. And then we talk church and we talk, strategy. And so one of the things that just came naturally is I ride motorcycles. And so every time I go out, I go riding with Greg and a couple other staff members. And that's how he likes to communicate. He also likes to communicate through text. And so I'll get texts every once in a while from Greg, or I'll text him, and that's just what he likes. And so I have spent a lot of time figuring that out and hopefully leaning into that as I learn his leadership style.
Yeah, so our team's been working with Harvest as well, and I've had some time to spend with Greg and some of the team there. And one of the conversations recently I had with Amy, I said, Amy, I hope that when I'm Greg's age, I have as much energy as he has. And then I thought, who am I kidding? I don't have that much energy right now in my life.
I don't. The man is 68 years old, and he'll get on a motorcycle and he's gone. I mean, I cannot keep up on the road, and that's Greg in life. It's just, he moves so fast, so quick. And so I just have to try to hang on and get a few bites every once in a while.
Chris, I found that with my job transitions in the past, they've also been huge opportunities for my personal leadership development. And in fact, what I have found, and this may sound crazy, but sometimes what made me successful in one leadership role hasn't necessarily worked in a new job. And so I'm just wondering, have you found, this to be the case for you as well? Do you see this as a leadership development opportunity for yourself? And if so, what are you sensing maybe you're learning in this season about your leadership?
Yeah, definitely. Every time I've taken a new role, it does that. Even if it's similar to, skill sets that I've had in the past. I've been an executive pastor, I've been the groups guy. And so I understand that. It's still, I'm 6 years removed from doing that at the local church level. I've been for the last 6 years working at a publishing company, working with a lot of churches, working with the Unstuck Group, but not really diving in deep with one team, one church. And so I really have to kind of go back and exercise those muscles again. What does it mean? What's great about consulting and working with Lifeway is I could come in for a couple days, tell them what they should do or what they can do, and then I leave and they have to actually do it. Well, now I'm like, I have to do it. I have all these ideas, but I have to actually, execute on those. And so, so it definitely is a growth for me personally. It's also a growth in a style of leading. Every time I take a new role, if I'm leading people, they need to be led in a different way. And so, I'll go back to basic books like the 1 Minute Manager and figure out, okay, is this a D1, D2, D3, D4 type of leadership moment? And with each direct report or each person I'm leading, they need to be led in a different way. And so I'm in the middle of that. I'm spending a lot of one-on-one time with people that I'm personally leading and just seeing what they need from me, what kind of leadership they need. Do they need, more one-on-one, less one-on-one, all of that. And so, yes, it definitely stretches me as a leader to take on a new responsibility or a new role like I'm taking on right now.
So in any job, but I would argue especially in a new leadership role, you can't win if you don't know the win. So I'm wondering, how have you worked with your new boss to kind of set expectations for your new role and to clarify your wins, Chris?
Yeah, one of the things I learned from first 90 days too is when you're starting out, or even before you officially start, you should negotiate your expectations, negotiate your wins. And that's something that we've done at Harvest. I know when we started talking about what the role could look like, I asked them, what are some of your expectations? What are you looking for when it comes to groups, growth in groups, people in groups, discipleship process? And so my direct boss sent me some things. I responded with, hey, that sounds great, but we might want to adjust this a little bit from my experience. We're not going to be able to go from 0 to 100 in 60 days. We're going to have to expand that timeline a little bit. So we went back and forth on this probably 2 or 3 times before we had both settled in on, okay, this seems like a winnable plan. And it worked from his side, or Harvest side, it worked from my side. So yeah, I would encourage anyone, whether you're going to a brand new company or a brand new church, or you're moving up in the organization to another role, to make sure that you have set expectations that you both agree to, because it's just going to be really difficult if you can't pull off what you're promising, and you burn out that way. You really do. And so that's something that we definitely did, was negotiate those expectations.
Chris, my tendency, and I put this on myself, I fully realize it, but my tendency is to go all in the early days of a new job. And before I know it, those early days, they extend into early months. And then before I realize it, my job and my life are out of balance. So with that in mind, maybe help give me some coaching for the future, but what encouragement would you give other leaders in new roles about staying healthy in all areas of their life?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, Tony, if you could coach me on that, because I have the same tendencies. I mean, I want to go in and obviously you want to achieve early wins, which is important to do. So you look for those things that you can win at right away. But then the tendency is to try to do everything at once and try to accomplish everything in the first 90, 100 days. And that easily, and I've seen it in my life, leads to burnout. There's a scale that I've seen when it comes to stress. A certain amount of stress can be really healthy, that it pushes our performance. And so if you've been in a role for a long time and you've done the same thing for a long time, actually it doesn't really help you, because you start to kind of fall off if you're not being pushed into new areas and new expertise areas that's just stretching you. But then there's also this line that you can get to where stress leads to burnout, where it's too much and it leads you over the cliff. And so I think there are some things that you've got to do to make sure that you're staying behind that line where you're falling off the cliff. And for me, one of them is personal disciplines. I have to stick to my spiritual disciplines, my routine as much as possible. So staying in the word every morning, staying, in scripture, staying in prayer, also with my family, that we keep our routines as much as possible. It was great for this move because we didn't have to move across the country. We're staying in the same city, but I have done moves where you move, hundreds of miles and you have to change family routines. And so you really need to pay attention to that, because you can get locked into what you're doing at work and forget your family. And so I think that's super important. So yeah, so those spiritual disciplines, understanding your plan, going into it, your first 90-day plan, your plan after that helps me stay on track and not try to do everything at one time, knowing that I've got this that I need to get accomplished in 30 days and I've got this in the next 30 days is super helpful. And then the last thing I would say, Tony, is having a good support system, having those people that are maybe outside of that new job, maybe outside of your family, that understand what you're going through, just the pressures of it. For me, that's other pastor friends that have gone through similar things. It's guys like you, Tony, that I can lean into, but just having that support system that, every job or every role after about, I would say 6 months, 3 to 6 months, starts to feel like you're in a valley, and you've done everything you think you can do to this point, and how are you going to get to the other side? And that's when you really need somebody to help you say, you can do it, you can get there, here's maybe some strategies, And so, yeah, so having that outside support system is critical.
Yeah. Chris, the overriding theme I'm hearing in your conversation is you had a proactive plan for how you were going to move into this new transition period in your life. And I think many of us, we tend to jump into new opportunities, and then we kind of react to the opportunities and the challenges as they come at us. And so in all of these areas, I think there's just a lot of wisdom in having that plan mapped out as you're taking that step to work that plan. Last question I have, and then I'll see if you have any additional thoughts. But we had the opportunity, I mentioned it earlier, to go through a strategic planning process with Pastor Greg and the team at Harvest while you were stepping into your new role. And I was just wondering, did that help you as a new leader on the team? Did that create some unexpected challenges for you? What was that experience like for you, Chris?
Yeah, and that was not planned at
No.
all. It just
Yeah.
kind of happened, but it's been super helpful. I'm telling you, one of the hurdles of joining a new organization is figuring out who they are, why they got to where they are, where they are, just the history of it, their vision, their mission. I mean, all of that usually takes quite a bit of time because you've got to talk to the right people. You've got to dig through whatever documentation they might have. When I went to Lifeway, I had to learn all the acronyms. There were just so many acronyms. I mean, it was just incredible. And it would have been helpful to just have them written down somewhere. Well, it's kind of that way with Harvest because Unstuck came in, did a strategic plan. I was actually a part of the health assessment part, which was the first part where we went in and just said, okay, how are we doing health wise? And then you and Amy came in and did a strategic plan with them where you kind of came up with the next 90 days and the future and then staffing and structure. All of that is now documented for me. And I can go in and easily just look at charts and look at things and see the history of the church. And also sitting in on part of it, I was able to be a little bit of an active participant on this is where we could go in the future. And so, yes, I would suggest if you are changing churches, suggest that they bring the Unstuck group in at the same time, and then you can learn everything you want to learn about the church. Now, it was very helpful going through a process like that at the same time as I was transitioning into the organization.
Well, here's what's crazy, Chris, and I don't think consultants normally do this, and this is probably in the don't do book someplace about consulting, but I've had churches reach out to me in the past. They are in transition, and it makes sense, I think, intuitively. Let's go through a strategic planning process, and then we can find a leader that helps us move our vision and our strategy forward. But I actually tell them, no, go find your leader first. And then I want to engage with you and that new leader through this process so that you're moving together, locking arms on where you're heading in your ministry. And so I think they're always shocked a little when I say, no, I don't want you to spend money with our team for this process right now. Let's wait until the new leader's in place. Well, Chris, I really do appreciate the insights you've shared. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I think the important thing is having a plan going into the new role. And again, whether it's a brand new church or a brand new organization, especially if it's that, having a plan going into that can keep you from getting burned out, overwhelmed, trying to do too much. But even if you're moving into a new role where they're promoting you to another level, something like that, just having a plan, knowing that you need to accelerate your learning, talking to people, listening more than you're telling people what to do. All of that will help you get off to a better start. And I'm seeing that right now. Again, I'm 45-ish days into it with Harvest. So I think maybe Tony and you and I should do a follow-up in about 45 days and maybe it's working, but it feels like it's really helping me kind of get off to this start. So yeah, I just encourage you, have a plan and utilize that plan.
All right. Very good.